It's time for a list of my favorite comedy specials of 2023, and it was a very good year in that regard. I still believe that we are on the verge of a comedy bubble burst, but it's still going strong. Compared to last year, it's like night and day. So much quality stuff came out. Of course, there were also so-so specials and some stinkers. Let's talk about them. Strap on and enjoy my top 10 best stand-up comedy specials of 2023. My name is Krzysztof Sawczuk and this is Stand Up Teka.
You know the 7, don't you?
Who are these people?
The world is like a ride.
Oh, it's brutal!
Let's start with some honorable mentions, things that almost made the list, number 11s if you will. Mark Normand, Soup to Nuts, it's a real cavalcade of great zingers, a couple of true showstoppers, and a handful of duds. It seems that Mark rushed this special a little, I don't know. Kyle Kinane on Shock and Struts proved that he can make a great bit of something as simple as a stain on a pillow and something as convoluted as a comparison between redneck trucks and preferred pronouns. Great stuff. One of my favorites, Big J Okerson, is back with Dog Belly, his special blend of gross outs, crowd work and charisma. Closer is quite meh here, but still, great special. Andrew Santino kicked off this year with Cheeseburger, which was very daring in some unexpected places and reminded me more and more of Bill Burr. Even if Mark Maron on From Bleak to Dark walks along some well-trodden paths, when he arrives at the last bit, it will be dark, heavy and simply brilliant. You can watch it just for the closer. Todd Barry in his domestic short hair is just Todd Barry, a guy who decides himself whether he bombs or not. And he's doing this very slowly and with an enthusiastic audience. From crowd work to slides, I'm buying it all. And finally, a new face, at least to me, Ralph Barbosa and his Cowabunga. A very likable Latino guy who'll show you how to utilize poses, don't rush things, and deliver material the way to squeeze everything from it, and still keep his own recognizable style. Okay, let's get to the list and start things off with number 10. John Mulaney, Baby J. John Mulaney is back with his probably least funny special to date, but without a doubt the most interesting one. A great story conveyed by a great performer like John will increase your attention span by a lot because it's a long one, but I wasn't bored even for a minute. This stark contrast between his old school, almost vaudeville-like joke writing and delivery and this new, sometimes really dark subject matter doesn't always gel in the best way, but that doesn't mean that there won't be some great moments here. There will be some observational parts, some personal ones, there will be a little bit of absurdity, but also very relatable chunks, even if you've never gone through something similar to John. It only shows what a great storyteller he is. We will buy a Rolex watch on drugs with him, reminisce about changing stations in public restrooms, and answer calls from Al Pacino. And the closer is a real gem that almost flows by itself thanks to everything that was established before it. Number 9. Michelle Wolf, It's Great to Be Here. It's on Netflix as a mini-series, 3 episodes for 20-25 minutes each, and not as a special, but I watch it as a one piece. And I liked it a lot. Who knew that I need somebody to scream at me with screeching voice about Me Too movement? But I definitely needed that. Or about being a woman who doesn't always fit the modern beauty standards. Or about Ted Kaczynski. Yeah, there's a lot of topics covered and intertwined here. Because it's a very socially engaged comedy, but with punchlines. Even if a little bit of clapter is creeping here and there. And those punchlines are punching at both sides of the argument, and those punchlines are raunchy, vulgar and obscene. Great stuff. Michelle must be very difficult to watch for somebody who is looking for stand-up comedy with clearly defined political views. And you know, the right ones. But me? I'm just looking for laughs, and she delivers them in spades. Number 8. Sarah Silverman, Someone You Love. The queen of stand-up comedy is only one. Sarah is back with a very Silverman-esque special. There will be a lot about her Jewish heritage and bodily fluids, but also about social issues. Thank God she never abandoned her signature style and always mixed some gross stuff in. When some more serious topic is discussed, you can be almost sure that some diarrhea is lurking just around the corner. And I'm more than okay with that, cause this shit is still funny to me. No pun intended. And the bit about Hitler is one of those when you ask yourself, how come nobody ever came up with it before? Which is one of the highest compliments for a comedian. What else? Great ad-libs, almost animated facial expressions, and we got ourselves a great special. And I will even forgive her for that tired bit with the comparison of pussy and balls. If you never saw anything from Sarah, this is a great place to start. It's like a distillation of her whole shtick. Dude, this special starts with a joke. What did the Jewish mother say to her porn star daughter after watching her in a gangbang? Do you really need a better recommendation? Number 7. Shane Gillis, Beautiful Dogs. Who would have thought that Shane would become the best political comedian in the United States? And I mean by far. He plays both sides of the spectrum like a fiddle, just looking for funny shit with no grandiosity. It's great. The moment when white people stopped being cool, the war in the Middle East, the house and plantation of George Washington, Trump versus Biden. That mix of topics could really result in a boring disaster, but not here. No sir. And that's because Shane is not an activist, so you never know which way the beat will go or where the punchline gonna land. He will also serve us some self-deprecating sex humor, a little bit a la Louis C.K., and his face. I mean, I will never get tired of stories of people assuming his mental state, let's say. There's also tons of irony here, and everything that delivered in a very loose and conversational style. I don't know if you could squeeze more just from the word dude. And remember that Shane is just getting started. Great hour. Number 6. Gary Gulman, Born on the Third Base. Oh man, it's so good. Gary made us wait for his newest special, but man, was it worth it. If you recognize him from his brilliant bit about the state's name abbreviation, you will be delighted by this hour. And if you haven't seen anything from him, it's like a quite unique combination of language humor. One could say that it's even in the realm of linguistics, with autobiographical parts about growing up in a relative poor household, great intelligent meta-comedy, and even social commentary. And in every one of these fields, there will be jokes and punchlines, sometimes smart, sometimes dumb, and sometimes goofy. No matter if Gary talks about ordering at Chipotle, the origin of every one-man show ever, or trust funds, he will find something funny, but also some deeper meaning. Almost everything here serves a purpose and has many levels. Also, extra points for no stupid intro and even commentary on that, once again, meta-humor, and poking fun at Seinfeld, which is always morally correct. The last callback was a little bit too predictable, but overall, superb stuff. We are somewhere around the halfway point, so let's stop for a minute and talk about the disappointments of this year, because God knows there were a lot of them. Starting with the big one, Chris Rock Selective Outrage, the special that made us wait for 45 minutes so Chris can finally talk about an Oscar slap, and on the way there are 2 or 3 good bits. The one with spaghetti is even very good, but it's just not enough. Not a great release. Segura put out Sledgehammer, special that require additional reading. If you aren't familiar with his many podcasts, Joey Diaz or Bert Kreischer, you won't get a lot of jokes. Not that those jokes are great in the first place. Hubris, man, was his downfall. Very weak special. And Fat Rascal from Stavros Halkias, who was in my top 3 last year, was just, I don't know, half-baked, not ready for release. Rushing another hour is still a big problem for many comedians. Here bits are just not finished, there's just not enough material. And I understand that Stavi didn't want to overdo crowd work on this one, but without it, everything is falling apart at the seams. Beth Stelling is one of my favorite comedians, but unfortunately on If You Didn't Want Me Then, she chooses clapter and being right over laughs and being funny. There are great jokes here, but they are drowning in this ocean of freaking clapter, and reading a list of side effects as a bit is borderline hacky. Still looking forward to her next release. And we had 2 bozos from the tail end of the year. Ricky Gervais on Armageddon is just fucking lazy. He will rehash tired old premises and observation that we have heard 100 times by this point. There are funny moments here, but the amount of material lifted almost verbatim from Stanhope, Carlin and himself That's just too much, man. And Dave Chappelle's The Dreamer is a continuation of his current trajectory, an hour of talking, 6 jokes, long touching stories with deeper meaning, a strange outfit, and hitting his tie with a mic. At this point it's more like a public speaking event than stand-up comedy, and it's a great listen, it's just not very funny. Back to the list. Number 5. Joe List, Enough for Everybody. Back to the list, literary, finally! Joe clicked with me, something skipped in my brain and now I think he's hilarious. Of course, I always recognize that he is a great joke writer, but there was always something missing. Not this time. I laughed out loud watching this. I think that this time there is a little bit more toilet humor in his act, which is absolutely great from a refined palette, and definitely there are more act-outs. When he makes his cool guy persona, it's incredibly funny. This special is a little bit of slow burner, so don't get discouraged, because the last half hour is just zinger after zinger. This mix of awkwardness and unshakable confidence, stories about misunderstandings, dumb friends, dumb advice from dumb friends, observational jokes about mundane stuff. It's just so human, so relatable. Who didn't catch something that he dropped mid-air and looked around to check if anyone had seen that? And if you liked Enough for Everybody, Joe puts on his YouTube page his anti-crowd work sessions, and those are also great. I'm waiting for his next hour. Maybe this time a change of venue is in order? Number 4. Jim Jefferies, High and Dry. Did anybody expected that Jim would come back with a great special? After almost 10 years of less than stellar work, he's back with his best hour since like Bear or something. So many great bits here. Gay bachelor, real male and female experience in the context of trans people. When was the last time when somebody tackled this topic in such a fun way? And of course, some sex stuff, which was always his forte. But even stuff outside his usual style, like this simple and observational bit about the suitcase's wheels, is airtight and presented flawlessly. He's loose, smiling a lot, and doing some great act-outs. It's just a pleasure to watch. Jim is a much stronger comedian when he avoids some overreaching arcs, big ideas, or political stuff. He's the best when he just makes fun jokes. And that's great. And I've seen his next hour live, so I'm not worried about his next special. It will be good. Welcome back, Jim. We missed you. Number 3. Nick Mullen, The Year of the Dragon. I was almost sure that we would never get a real special from Nick, but there it is. As a somewhat of a fan of Camptown, I know how funny he is, but also how it's seemingly not transferable to the stand-up comedy setting. Even Nick himself has talked about this issue a couple of times. But it worked! It worked so fucking well! What do we have here? Lots of dark humor, abortion, racism. Great jokes that make you think, how come nobody thought of that before, like the one with Ninja Turtles. Natural and unforced impressions and characters, his character work was always top-notch. Great crowd reactions, lots of laughs, a pretty small and cozy comedy club that just makes you want to be there, very loose delivery, seriously I cannot think of a better way to convey those jokes, the whole consistent persona that you can say something about after the show. In a nutshell, everything that I love in stand-up comedy. And the whole hour is just packed with material, not a lot of filler here. Also, it seems that Nick enjoyed himself during the taping, which collides a little bit with his cynical outlook from the podcast, but on the other hand, it gives us hope for another special. He's just too good to not to do it. Number 2. Louis C.K. at the Dolby. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the GOAT. The best ever, Mount Rushmore, everything that. Thank you and good night. It's probably like Louis' 10th hour or something, and he never released something below a certain level, but this time the quality is almost on par with his best work, like Shameless and Hilarious era. And he does what he always excels at, taking a very dark subject and walking us through it with lots of jokes and funny and poignant observations. Slavery, Auschwitz, homelessness, take your pick. Even abortion, you would think that this topic was done, that you physically cannot write new good bits about it, and it's probably true for like 99% of comedians, but not for Louis. Hell, he did a couple of minutes of original material on religion. and everything here has such a beautiful natural flow to it. No sharp stops, no wasting time filler, from Jesus to Hitler. In some stretches the laughs per minute ratio is really mind-blowing. Incredibly good special from incredibly good comedian. And even if you watched his stream from Madison Square Garden, which shares a lot of material with this release, at the Dolby is still worth checking out. Firstly, there is new stuff here, and secondly, everything here is tightened up, polished and refined. It's the ultimate comeback of the absolute king. Okay, one last detour before number 1 spot. Other things that I saw and want to say something about it. I'm still not a fan of Nate Bargatze, but there are great moments on Hello World. Maybe he will click with me in the future, but for now it's just too slow, too monotone and too family friendly for me. Matt McCusker, pal of Shane Gillis, showed a lot of potential on The Speed of Light. It's pretty much straight up stand-up, no bells and whistles. Some premises are a little tired at this point and the audience evidently wasn't helping here, but it's worth checking out. Vacation Baby from Harry Kondabolu is really good in the first half, where there are jokes, but the farther it goes, the more political statement-y and soapboxy it becomes. Dusty Slay released more like a set than a special under the title Being Poor in the Trailer Park, which is a great warm-up before his Netflix hour. If you don't know this chill-out redneck with great observational humor and a very charming delivery, definitely check it out. The strangest thing I saw this year was by far Slow and Steady by Joe Pera. It's a deep alternative and so slow that your brain just crashes and starts to laugh. It's full of anti-comedy and meta-comedy and demands quite a lot from the viewer, but if you give it a chance and sit through like 20 minutes of it, you will remember it for the rest of your life. Mike Birbiglia once again makes you laugh and cry on The Old Man and the Pool. At this point he's like a separate genre of comedy. This time we'll get more straight up jokes, but also more tear-jerking and, I don't know how to put it, hacky emotional stuff. Watch it and judge it on your own accord. And I had to check something from Matt Rife, so I put on Matthew Steven Rife, and it's okay. Not as good as people say, but definitely not as bad as people say. Cool jokes, a pinch of really bad acting, and the biggest problem, an awful audience. No wonder he tries to shake off some of them. Finlay Christie's OK Zoomer is the best thing I saw in the TikToker/YouTuber does stand-up genre. It's not particularly good, but in a moment it can easily be. Dude is without a doubt talented and knows his way around jokes and slides. In terms of less known names, Django Gold on Back of Tricks made quite an impression on me. I don't know if it's a good one. The school shooter vibe is very real, the delivery at some point is so strange that it's almost terrifying, but there is some gold buried there. Similar situation with Sam Talent and his The Toad's Morale. Very disgusting and gross special that demand from you a certain headspace. It's definitely not for everybody, and it's also quite poorly recorded, but there are great moments here. I have the book, but I haven't started it yet. And a special mention of the god-awful specials that I saw. The first one is Daddy from Jeremiah Watkins, who still thinks that unironic use of gay voice as a punchline is freaking hilarious. Seriously, he used it a couple of times. He will also reenact a male orgasm for 10 minutes through this special. He's like Sebastian Maniscalco, only even dumber. It's like if you took a shitty, hacky comedian from the late 90s or early 2000s and gave him a camera. It's so bad. And another one is 30 Minutes with Luis J. Gomez. I never understood people who complain that stand-up comedy is just being edgy for sake of being edgy, using the word retard as a punchline, it's only punching down, it's only misogyny, controversial subject matters, and curse words without any deeper thought behind it all. And now I understand. That's Gomez's whole act. Dumb, empty and hacky. And he even tried to get the audience to chant his own name, and then was so surprised that somebody doesn't know his freaking podcast? It's garbage, it's just garbage. But now it's time for number 1. Pete Holmes, I Am Not For Everyone. I would have never guessed that Pete would bring me so much joy this year. I've always liked his stuff, but it just wasn't it. Something was missing. And not this time. This time everything was just right. The things that he does with his stupid face, and I mean it in the best way possible. It's not just funny, it's pissing myself funny. especially when he takes it to its extreme and just milks it, like in the bit about asking a father for his daughter's hand. It's just too much. I had to pause it and compose myself. The older he gets, the worse he looks, the better comic he becomes. Once again, not throwing shade, I'm telling it with love and utmost respect. And it's probably his dirtiest set yet, more vulgar stuff, more sex stuff, but at the same time, he's still very inclusive and has a very welcoming vibe, like everybody is welcome to enjoy his comedy. Even when something bombs, he just smiles, shrugs his arms and goes for another one. No ego, no getting mad. He even thanked the crowd for not laughing a couple of times. And so many great jokes here, so much silliness and goofiness, and even references to other comedians that there will be quite a couple here, and that I'm normally not a fan of. Here they just work. You just cannot be mad at Pete. I don't know if the religious/nothingness bit in the middle is necessary, but for that segue, yeah, sure, keep it. Awesome, awesome special. The funniest thing that I've seen all year. Maybe Pete is not for everyone, but he's certainly for me. Like I've said, great year. When Norman and Big J are not on the main list, you know that there was quite a competition. I look forward to the next one, and thank you so much for your attention. Feel free to check out my list for other years. Stay safe, stay sexy, go fuck yourself, and my name is Krzysztof Sawczuk, and this was Stand Up Tech.